No. You know what? This is how I believe, okay? I'm from the old school. I believe this. I would rather play with 10 people and just get penalized all the way until we got to do something else, rather than play with 11 when I know that right now that person is not sold out to be a part of this team. It is more about them than it is about the team. I cannot play with them, cannot win with them, cannot coach with them, can't do it. I want winners, 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 winners.
Are you ready? Are you truly ready for the trade deadline? November 24th, 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Are you ready to deal with some of these mental midgets as they mull it over for 3 to 4 days? Players that they haven't even started, didn't even consider starting, but now they have to overthink it. Oh, they picked them up on a whim in the 12th round, but now they have to think about it for a few days. Are you ready to dump off some of these disappointing players who you've looked at with a sense of discontent over the past 3 to 4 weeks? Are you ready to deal with some of these people like J-Ray who continue to play games and offer you players like Kyle Pitts? All the credit in the world to the commish for not playing games and dumping off Christian Watson. I dumped off Dalvin Cook. Why? Because he has no value. Obviously, Ed had to pick him up because he's simply backing up Breece Hall. But I wasn't going to play games and make people offers for players that no one wants and no one would trade for them. Are you ready? Well, if you are, listen to this. There were 2 trades done this week, one between Joe and I, and the other with Eric and Pedro. First, let's go through the trade with Eric and Pedro, and we're not going to spend too much time on this. Pedro received Christian Kirk, Isaiah Pacheco, and Brandon Ayuk. Eric receives Kenneth Walker, I think he's the third of the second, Jalen Waddle, and Noah Brown. I'm going to plow through this trade, and I'm going to tell you that it's pretty obvious who the winner of this trade is. Pedro is the winner of this trade. Obviously, with the injury, hindsight is 2020, the injury to Kenneth Walker III, whom Eric was trading because I guess he figured he was getting a better running back. I believe Kenneth Walker is in the top 4. Let's see, top 4 or 5. He's the 6th ranked running back in the league. Obviously more consistent, I guess, than Pacheco, even though his numbers have been scattered. He was consistent at the beginning of the season for Pedro. But Pacheco is obviously on a struggling offense. Brandon Ayuk, who Eric just got from Ed, is a better wide receiver, at least this season, than Jalen Waddle. He's definitely more consistent with double-digit scores over his last 3 outings and over 100 yards in 2 of those games. Of course, Noah Brown missed this past week, 11, but he had over 100 yards in his last 2 games with now the emergence of CJ Stroud. And Pedro picks up Christian Kirk. I guess for some reason, Pedro wants a bit of security in the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver core, so he now picks up Christian Kirk. But the reason why I say that Pedro won the trade, and I mentioned last week Ed shuffling the deck, and I feel in some ways this trade was a bit of just reshuffling the deck. Not too much of a difference with the exchanges here, but I will say that Kenneth Walker III's schedule is a lot tougher than Pacheco's. Injury aside, Isaiah Pacheco's schedule, weeks 12 through 17, obviously that being the rest of our season, week 12 against the Raiders, 13 against the Packers, then he's got the Buffalo Bills, and then after that, it's the New England Patriots, the Raiders again, and then the Bengals. Okay? Now, Kenneth Walker III has the San Francisco 49ers this week, then the Dallas Cowboys, then the 49ers again, then the Philadelphia Eagles, then Tennessee, and lastly, week 17 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm very surprised at Pedro making normal, regular trades. I'm happy to see it, though Pedro completely ignores my trades. I have offered Pedro, and I've canceled, because let me tell you something. Sound like Fire Marshal Bill. Let me tell you something. I take it very personally when I send you an offer and you just leave my shit hanging for like a day or two. I cancel that shit. Any of you, if you notice that I send you an offer and then it just disappears, I canceled it. I take that shit very personally because I send people good offers, and I sent Pedro something that would benefit him in the following weeks, right? In the weeks to come, I offered Pedro a bit of security and he ignored it. I don't know why, but he did. But I'll say that Pedro, I think has the upper hand in this trade. Obviously, gaining Jalen Waddle has some form of value because you figure at some point he's going to boom. He hasn't boomed this season. And Noah Brown, not sure if Eric's really going to start him, but he is starting Jalen Waddle this week. But with the oblique injury to Kenneth Walker III, it is what it is. And I do like the fact that Pedro siphoned a running back from Eric, who Eric was starting, and, with some, Isaiah Pacheco, he's at least been consistently putting up sort of eights, and let's see. Isaiah Pacheco. Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco, earlier in the season, kind of like Kenneth Walker, had better numbers, but he's consistently been putting up 9, 11, a 4, a 6, a bye week, then an 8. So kind of low-end RB2 numbers, but I think with the strength of schedule, Eric would be a lot more dangerous with Pacheco. So I appreciate, in the middle of my division run, that Pedro eliminates that asset for Eric and picks it up himself. Pedro's team obviously not being as good as Eric's team, so that's great. The second trade that we're going to get to is the trade between Joe and I. Now, as you all know, I have lost Mark Andrews, so my goal in trading with Joe was to pick up a tight end. Paul assumed that the tight end that I was trying to pick up was Dalton Schultz. No, sir. We aim for the stars here. I was trying to get George Kittle from Joe in exchange for Kyler Murray. I'm obviously trying to make this deal because Joe has Sam Howell. And as I said, Sam Howell is a okay fantasy quarterback, but he's no Kyler Murray, especially Kyler Murray if he's going to be running, which his first two starts, I should say, he's shown that he will be running. So you've got to imagine, Kyler Murray in comparison to, who would you rather have? Let's do a toss-up. Would you rather have Kyler Murray or Trevor Lawrence? I think the majority would choose Kyler Murray, even though Trevor Lawrence went off this week. We'll get to Hensel's game in a bit. Would you rather have Kyler Murray or Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes put up a 16 this week. I would rather have Kyler Murray. So Joe didn't accept that offer, but the offer that he did make, and I found it a bit of a surprise that he then offered to trade Rachaad White in exchange for Michael Pittman Jr., who was on a bye. Now, Michael Pittman Jr. is a good player that I've had on my team. He's consistently scored, maybe 6 to 9 points every week. He's the best wide receiver that the Colts have. But to answer Paul's question and Paul's wonder about why I made the trade, I would rather have a running back in the flex position than a wide receiver. Especially, haven't you noticed that people, now when people speak, they say especially? I don't get that. I don't know. When did that become a thing? Is this sort of like a Mandela effect that now everybody's like, especially? I will never say especially. Never. I don't care if you show me the fucking Merriam-Webster proper way to say it is especially. I've always said especially. Especially. All right? I don't give a fuck. Don't ever fucking talk to me in person and tell me especially. I will punch you in the fucking face. Rachaad White's carries are what, it attracted me to him. No, Andy. It attracted me to him because obviously he gets the bulk of the carries. He didn't get that many carries this week against the San Francisco 49ers, but he did get a touchdown and 11 points. But before that, 20 carries over the past 2 weeks. 20 carries each week. I have to have that. I need that. And speaking of strength of schedule, the next coming weeks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are as follows. Ed, you might want to listen to this because you traded away Mike Evans. Not that it matters because you're eliminated already. The Colts, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Packers, the Jags, then the Saints. Come on. I had to trade him. So when he sent me that offer, even though I wanted the tight end, I figured this was 1 in a million. I've got an offer from Joe, and by the way, I have an offer from Joe J. Because you said that I have something on Joe or whatever. I fucked Joe in his ass. I called him a faggot afterwards, and then I took pictures of the situation. I said, if you ever tell anybody about this, then that's what happened. But I also got the trade from Joe because obviously I added him in the chat. That's the only way you're going to get any of these guys to come out. Don't you notice? You only get a response from Hensel when you add him. You have to add these guys. You have to say, yo, I sent you an offer. I sent you an offer. That's the only way this is going to happen. If Joe would have offered me something crazy in exchange for Rachaad White, I wouldn't have taken it. Trust me, I wouldn't have taken it. I know I'm the guy that comes here and talks shit and, I fuck around a lot, but I have some integrity when it comes to this. I have a code of honor when it comes to fantasy. If Joe would have offered me Zay Flowers for Rachaad White, I wouldn't have made that trade because then there would be a red flag there because I don't think the value is equal. I think it was an equal trade for both of us. Joe obviously gets some help in the wide receiver realm because, in my opinion, do I think Michael Pittman Jr. is a more consistent, solid start than a DJ Moore? I think so. It might be arguable if you say DJ Moore with Justin Fields. Maybe you've got more of an argument for DJ Moore there, but even though I still think he's boom or bust. And, he ships off one of the many running backs that he has. He has Derrick Henry. He has Travis Etienne. He had Devin Achane, who was hurt, but he will play this Friday against the Jets. So it makes sense for Joe. It makes sense for me. What are you going to do? Oh. This is your Week 11 recap. I hope you appreciate the consistency that I've been coming with this year. There's a reason for it. Soon you'll understand. Bundy here, you there. A disappointing loss for Team Bundy this week against Ewok Rape. I lose 78 to 104. It's a combination between the Andrews injury. I don't really think was a reason why I lost this week, because Mark Andrews has scored 3 to 4 points and I've still dominated you guys. Tight end in general, and that's the other reason why I didn't make Joe a counter offer, because I did think, okay, I'll make Joe a counter for Schultz and say, hey, do you want Schultz for Kyler Murray? But then I thought losing a tight end is the best scenario that you could consider if you lost anyone. Yes, it is Mark Andrews, but it's the only position that it's not that important, which is why we're 86ing it this year. So I figured, you know what, I could bounce back. I picked up what the fuck is his name? David, whatever. The tight end from the Browns. I'll say his name later. Because I'm looking at the week 11 score, so they adjust the lineup to what it was at the time. Anyway, it wasn't because of the loss of Mark Andrews. I feel that the main reason why I lost was the injury to Joe Burrow. Or Joe Burrow. That's the reason why I lost. I think Jamar Chase would have probably had about, I don't know, possibly 8 more points, to his total. I think Joe Mixon would have probably gotten around 20 points. I think that would have been possible. And then there's the terrible game that Austin Eckler had. I think he fumbled around the 4 or 5 yard line. Disappointing game for him. Of course, I started the Chargers. That didn't work out as well. On my bench, I had Jaylen Warren. See, I can't trust Jaylen Warren. And by the way, that was the trade that Jay sent to me. He said Jaylen Warren for Kyle Pitts. Jay's tried to get Jaylen Warren from me a couple times this year. I've denied him both times. It's hard to trust Jaylen Warren. It's hard to trust the Pittsburgh offense. And I understand that Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator, was just fired this week. So does this mean more Jaylen Warren? I don't know. But guess what? I've got Ed this week, so I can stand to put him on the bench. So even if he gets a 20, I don't think it should hurt me. On the other side, Jalen Hurts didn't do much. Christian McCaffrey just put in a standard performance. I wasn't able to take advantage of Cooper Kupp's injury. Look, he had 2 injuries. So, look, even more of a reason there. He had the injury to Cooper Kupp. He had the injury to Kenneth Walker. But the main reason why Eric defeated me was the Jets' offense is terrible. See, Ed, even if there was some sort of conspiracy and you did this just to ensure the victory for Eric, you still ended up helping Eric indirectly, because the Jets offense is horrid. They are subpar. 21 points for the Bills defense, and not to mention 17 points for Tyler Bass. I'm not responsible for Tyler Bass anymore. We have been separated for weeks, so I don't give a fuck about his point total. And on Eric's bench, nothing much going on there. So Ewok Rape picks up the victory. It hurts me because I still have a chance to take this division from him, but losing to him does not help. Was there anything else that I failed to mention in this game? No. Though I will say that I'm sick and tired of the Josh Allen hate. You'll never see me complain about Josh Allen. Every week, I just expect him to throw his ceremonial interception or his his fumble. Just get one turnover out of the way. I expect it. It's okay, because I know that he's just going to turn around and get 19 points or 25 points on top of that. So, he scores a lot of touchdowns. He makes a lot of turnovers. He is the Brett Favre of this era. So I'm not going to complain too much about him. Moving on to the next game, we have Jokes on You picking up his 3rd Tito Award of the year, losing to Pork Chop Express 65-80. Of course, the injury here to Joe Burrow is what hurt Pedro the most here. For some reason, also, Pedro didn't start Calvin Ridley. I don't get it. I don't get trading Devontae Adams a couple weeks ago over to your Alfredian in exchange for Calvin Ridley and Brian Robinson Jr., who's been awesome for Pedro 2 weeks so far. But you put Calvin Ridley on the bench. I don't understand it. Maybe it's a matchup thing and you figure, Christian Kirk, it should work out better for him. But I'm thinking of it like, no, this guy is Devontae Adams. I just put Devontae Adams on the bench and 23 points, you lose. That would have been the difference. Pedro would have picked up the victory if he just would have had some stones, and he does not. 0 points from his kicker, from Greg Zerloin. I don't know if he just picked him up this week, but that obviously wasn't a good move. 16 points also from Joshua Dobbs on his bench. Of course, again, hindsight is 2020. Pedro wouldn't have known that. But I believe he is starting Joshua Dobbs for the season moving forward. Of course, I made the offer to Pedro for Kyler Murray, but let's not talk about that. And Isaiah Pacheco was on Pedro's bench with 8 points. But again, Brian Robinson Jr., he's got to start. Josh Jacobs, no matter what. Josh Jacobs is a burden. He is a fucking burden. Hold up, I have to sip some water. On the other side, you had 25 points for Justin Herbert, just 8 points from Raheem Mostert, and 8 points from Darrell Robinson. Wait, Darrell Henderson Jr., did he get dropped? It says free agent. Has it always said free agent for him? Yeah, I think it has. Anyway, who cares? 8 points for him, 0 points for A.J. Brown. I believe he just got 1 catch on Monday. That's unexpected. And 12 points for Cortland Sutton. So Pork Chop Express picks up the victory. And, him and I, we also went back and forth on some trades, possibly picking up a tight end there. That didn't work out. Obviously there's too much value when you're discussing a Travis Kelce. So, that's all we got to say about that. The next game here is... Look, folks, death, taxes, and Orlando beating Joe. That's always going to happen. And he always whips his ass. It always happens. Ricky O defeating Joelicus Maximus 126-279. Nothing for Joe went right this week. Again, the injury to Achane. Just 5 points from just 8 collective points from Derrick Henry and Travis Etienne. That's not going to get you a victory. CeeDee Lamb comes back to earth with 9 points. 14 from George Kittle. You motherfucker, Joe. And Orlando gets 23 points from Lamar Jackson. Just the king of inconsistency, Lamar Jackson, who had 11 points in week 8, 11 points week 9, week 10, 12 points, and 23 this week for Orlando. Everything comes together at the right time. Saquon Barkley also gets 25 and 21 points from the Dallas Cowboys defense. If you score 20 points from your defense, you ain't losing to nobody. So Ricky O picks up the Kirk Cameron Award for Fantasy Excellence. Good for him, and he moves on to a record of 5-6. Orlando trying to get his way into the playoffs. See, next game is Gaylander. Sorry. It wasn't even that. It's Guylander. I'm sorry, not Gay. See, Gaylander doesn't make any sense because that doesn't rhyme with high. So Guylander. Winning 84-76, even with the buys to Alvin Kamara, the buy to Jonathan Taylor. Andy still beats Jay by a small margin. Andy, we're never going to stop giving you shit about this. Look back to all the other recaps from years before. Look back 2019 or whatever, 2020, when you won your first championship. We were giving you props. Last year, we were giving you props because you had a good team. Jay's Puerto Rican, so maybe he can't word it correctly. Puerto Ricans sort of have a problem with their diction, but when he says your schedule is the reason why you're here, that doesn't exactly say what this is all about. You're kind of like the Steelers recently. Like, you saw how the Steelers just keep getting away with victories. People get more yards than them. They get out-yarded in the game, but somehow they get the victory. They face the Browns without Deshaun Watson. Now they face the Bengals this week without Joe Burrow. And then I think they face the Bengals another time later on in the year. You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You keep getting away with these random misfortunes that happen to teams. You just keep getting away with it and keep getting victories. This week, I'll say that this has probably been one of your better weeks over the past month or so. Let's see if we can look at... Andy hasn't scored 100 points in quite some time. It's been a while. I don't think since the tie with Eric. Yeah, since the tie with Eric, week 6, Andy hasn't scored over 100 points, right? He's got 98, then he scored 77 when he lost to Team Bundy. Imagine losing to Andy this year. Imagine that, Eric. Can you imagine these guys? Then he gets a win against Zach Wilson. 70 points there, 89 points as he beats Pork Chop Express, and 84 this week against Jay. So Andy doing what Andy does, as I've said, but he gets the victory. He gets 20 points from Tyreek Hill. He gets 17 from Keenan Allen, 12 points from his defense, and just 16 points from Patrick Mahomes. Jay, as I said, back to earth with the Dallas Cowboys, and that was very surprising because they're facing the Carolina Panthers, the worst team in football. Just 15 points for him, 13 for St. Brown, 14 for Devontae Adams. So Devontae Adams looks like he's waking up, but Andy gets the victory. Now he is 9-1-1. He has clinched his division, and he has now clinched the bye. So Andy just 2 games away from 3 chips in a row. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine this nightmare that we're all in? The one thing that Jay did kind of articulate correctly was we've been in this dream state, this nightmare state ever since COVID. Like, you just notice that ever since COVID hit, Andy became like good at fantasy all of a sudden. Like, Andy was always kind of like, I don't know. He was always kind of like, makes it to the playoffs. Sometimes he makes it to, he was kind of like Pedro. Andy was a lot like Pedro. And then all of a sudden he like turns into me. Can you guys even imagine this? The last game that we have here, and of course, it's it's the funniest game of them all. Zach Wilson, the formerly known as the Floridian Crippler, now Zach Wilson loses to Plathanos, 80-100. Hensel getting 100 points for the very first time this season on Ed, dunking on Ed with 100 points. 31 points from Trevor Lawrence, 15 from David Montgomery, 13 from Tony Pollard. The rest of his team didn't do anything, but he got 17 from his kicker. And over on the other side, a nice old negative from Garrett Wilson. Negative 2 points from Garrett Wilson. 15 points from CJ Stroud. You see all this hype, all this CJ Stroud. Look, man, he threw 3 interceptions. So if he didn't have 3 interceptions, he would have had 21 points. This isn't some crazy shit. As my mother would often say, algo del otro mundo. Like, this isn't like out of this world. It's not. Maybe to the NFL, to the real world game, he is, he's breaking barriers. He's doing something that rookies don't often do. Like, he's just stepping in there and he's just slinging it. But in fantasy world, against the Arizona Cardinals, just 15 points for CJ Stroud. Yes, he gets 20 from Tank Dell. As we said, we understand why you got Tank Dell. Though, let's see how, let's see how often he's gonna keep doing this. They got the Jaguars this week. I'm just hoping that, I'm not really hoping. It's just, I just know what's gonna happen. And of course, what we love the most out of this is Once again, Brock Purdy outplays CJ Stroud for the second week in a row, this time by more points, by 11 points. Brock Purdy outplays CJ Stroud. So that would have gotten Ed more points, but he wants to continue to ride the hype train more than the practical train. That's why he's 3-8. And I also want to say that Ed's message to Eric, I think Paul mentioned it. Ed's message to Eric is classic Ed. I think it was like 2:30 in the afternoon when CJ Stroud had another touchdown. Hensel didn't think that Trevor Lawrence had it in him. He didn't think that Hensel's kicker would also get so many points. Ed thought he had it in the bag, and he sends Eric a message. Thank you, Eric. And it's just like passive aggressive towards all of us. It's passive aggression towards Paul. It's passive aggression towards me. I think Jay might have said something. I'm not sure, but it's passive aggression towards all of us. And I think Pedro too. Pedro's been agreeing with he's kind of been in and out with the trade. Like he likes comments and he's like, yeah, I agree with certain stuff. So he's being passive aggressive against all of us. Thank you, Eric. You see? And he loses to the lowest scoring team in the league. 80-100. We're just going to leave it there. Let's move on to the standings. Of course, you have Guy Lander at top, winning the WCW division with a record of 9-1-1. There's nuance to all these opinions. There's nuance to all of the observations that I make about your team. For years, we've looked at your teams, and even if your team was 10-2, we told you if you were your record or if you weren't your record, and you are not 9-1-1. You'll see, because right now, if the playoffs started today, I would face Hensel in the first round. After I fucking destroy Hensel, then I go and I stick my dick in your ass for the second time, little man. You understand? For the second time, okay? Second in the division is Big Papa Pooh with 6-5-0. Ricky O at 6-5-0. Of course, we have to say the O because of the fucking ties. Pork Chop Express with the same record at 6-5-0. And at the bottom of the WCW division is Joelicus Maximus with a record of 4-7. The NWO division, 4 now. Ewok Rape at top with 7-3-1. The Toronto Bundy with 5-5-1. Plathanos with 5-5-1. Joke's on You with 4-7-0. And Sack Wilson with 3-8. I also want to mention that Ed has a 2% chance of making the playoffs. Closest to that is Pedro at 10. Then Joe with 25. And then everyone has a 50% chance and up. Obviously, Andy with 100%, Eric with 99%, Team Bundy with 87%. But I just want to say that Ed has a 2% chance. Ed's in the chat like, oh, I'm not done. Ed, you're alive like a car crash victim in a vegetative state is alive. It's over, sir. The top scorers in the league are, let's see, we have Ewok Rape at top with 1,094 points. Joelicus Maximus at number 2 with 1,033. They face each other this week. Ricky O with 1,027. Pork Chop Express with 1,026. Guy Lander with 122. Sorry, with 1,022. And we'll just mention the Toronto Bundy because I'm right behind Andy with 1,013. It bees like that. So, this week is this is it, huh? If you're not out of it, you will be out of it this week, sir. And this is why I say this. Let me just take a sip of water. Okay, because you've got Sack Wilson versus the Toronto Bundy here. And the reason why you're done is why you've been done all of the 2023 season. This isn't even about your selection of Justin Tucker. That's old. We're done with that. You continuing to play the Jets. Has Ed played the Jets defense every game this year? Has he done that? I'm not gonna look through the papers, but let's just say this. The Jets defense, in terms of fantasy, aren't what the New England Patriots were like 3 years ago when Paul had them. Do you guys remember that season? It was one of Paul's MVP seasons. Most points in the league. It was one of Paul's MVP seasons where the Patriots were just scoring 15, 20 points. They were the highest scoring slot in his team for like the first 6 or 7 weeks. It was ridiculous. The Jets have scored 20 points once. Then they have an 18-point performance. By the way, the 20 points was in week 1. This was when, they had that game where Aaron Rodgers got hurt. They ran one back. It was a very emotional game for the Jets. Since then, week 5, 18 points against the Denver Broncos when they sucked. And week 11, 11 points. They had a bye. Then 8, 4, 8, and -1 this past week against the Buffalo Bills. Eric said, why did you play the Buffalo Bills? I get that Josh Allen throws interceptions, but I don't know. It's like it does make sense, but then it's kind of fucking stupid because yes, he does throw interceptions, but he's going to score eventually. There's too many weapons on the team. And this week you're playing the Jets against the Miami Dolphins. Ed, don't do it. Ed, if you really want this to be a better game, don't do it. I'm not saying the Jets are going to get -7 points. I certainly hope that Miami does them dirty like that. But this isn't going to be a 20-point. You have to search for that at this point. At this point, you have to maximize what you can possibly do. And by stubbornly just playing the Jets, just so you can show up in the chat and say, oh, guy with those Jets, just to have some fucking common ground with people, when the real issue is you just being stubborn and playing the same stupid players just because, I don't know, you're just hoping, I guess you love hope, Ed. You got hope from Eric, and now you're just hoping that the Jets intercept 3 passes and run it back and get 25 points and you can laugh. And I don't know. And also the fact that you're just playing, that you're not going to trade Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall. The problem that Pedro had at the beginning of the season was that he had both of the Raiders, and he traded away one of them. In hindsight, maybe it's looking like he should have traded Josh Jacobs because Devontae Adams is waking up, but I commend him for trading, for not staying on the sinking ship. He transferred. He went somewhere else, but you are still starting the same 2 Jets that gave Eric 21 points last week. If they were so lethal, if they were so good, they wouldn't give opposing defenses such high fantasy scores. This is the main reason why you're going to lose, and we're going to see it kind of early in the week because you have a lot of games early. Obviously, the Jets are playing on Black Friday. Of course, the NFL, the gluttonous, greedy NFL, they have to hoard every fucking day, just every opportunity that they have to make money. They've got to do it. Don't be surprised if they add another week to the season next year or some shit. Yeah, so this isn't going to be as big of an ass whipping as last time. It's not going to be, 132-66? I think that was the exact score. I remembered it. It's not going to be that bad, but, because obviously I don't think my team is as strong as it was that week. Because, Jamar Chase, let's see what happens. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Anyway, Ewok Rape versus Joelicus Maximus, the highest 2 scoring teams in the league. Eric now with Jalen Waddle. He is not starting. Well, can't start Kenneth Walker. He is starting Ramondre Stevenson. And Joe still has Sam Howell. Good luck with that. Pork Chop Express going up against Big Papa Pooh. Jay announcing in league that they are facing each other in other leagues as well. Guys, no one gives a rat's ass about your other leagues. Really, we don't care. Shut the fuck up about it. I care about your leagues as much as I care about your, I don't know, fuck you. That's the point. The point of all this was just to get to the point that I could just tell you to go fuck yourself. Plathanos going up against Jokes on You. This is a big game here for the playoff run. Plathanos obviously sticking around because of teams like Ed giving him opportunities to win. And Pedro with a record of 4-7, 2 losses more than Hensel, obviously having the advantage of tying with Team Bundy in week 1. Let's see what happens here. And the last game is Ricky O against Guy Lander. 9-1-1, Andy's record reads. Is that a warning to Andy? Andy, look at that. 9-1-1. There's an emergency. Could the emergency be a big injury to Andy? Of course, Andy gets lucky because Aaron Jones is going to be out for a bit, but then he gets back this little fucknut for the Rams. He gets Kyron Williams. So it's just like Andy just keeps just being the luckiest team in the fucking fantasy season. It's ridiculous at this point. Let's see what happens with Ricky O. He's still fighting for his playoff life, as the rest of us are. Yeah. It happens. Yeah, man. So, make those trades. But I'll be watching these trades because now you guys can try to pull some slick shit. I'll hit that fucking veto. And Ed, this is the week, man. You always lose to me. You know, if you're not done, you will be done this week. And that's how it goes. So, as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings. And may your wide receivers get arrested for a marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves.